My name is Naomi, and I am 53 years old. For the last 10 years, my life has been measured in sunrises over the east pasture and the quiet clucking of my Rhode Island Reds as I scatter their feed. This small farm in rural Ohio was my husband Mark's dream, and after he passed, it became my anchor, my solace, and my entire world. It's a hard life, but an honest one, and every ache in my bones at the end of the day felt like a tribute to him. That particular morning, the air was crisp with the promise of early fall, and the weight of my daily routine felt familiar and comforting. I was hauling a bucket of water to the vegetable garden when I heard the screen door slam. My son Darren, 28 years old and still making his home in his childhood bedroom, bounded down the porch steps with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and a travel mug in his hand. His face was lit up with a boyish excitement I hadn't seen in a while. "Hey, Mom, just heading out," he called, his voice breezy. "Me and the guys snagged some crazy last-minute deals, flying down to Clearwater for a week, gonna soak up some sun before winter hits." He took a sip of his coffee, glancing past me toward the fields. "You'll be totally fine, right? It's just the usual stuff. The chickens, the garden, maybe check on the alfalfa." He said it like it was an afterthought, a minor task. He didn't mention that the alfalfa was ready for its final cutting, a two-person job that required timing before the forecasted rain. He didn't see the way my hands, rough and soil-stained, tightened around the bucket handle. He gave me a quick one-armed hug, his mind already on beaches and beers. "Don't work too hard," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes for me. Then he was in his car, a little sports coupe he'd bought for himself last year, and disappeared in a cloud of gravel dust. I stood there, the empty lane stretching before me, the silence of the farm suddenly feeling less like peace and more like a vast, hollow room. That cold knot in my stomach, the one I'd been ignoring for years, pulled tight. This was different. This felt like an ending. Before I share what unfolded in that quiet emptiness he left behind, I want to know who's out there listening. Where are you right now? Are you on a farm, in a suburb, in an apartment, in a city that never sleeps? Take a moment and tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you know what it's like to feel the ground shift under your feet in your own home, if you understand that mix of love and quiet desperation, then do me a favor. Tap that like button and hit subscribe. You're not just watching a story, you're joining me on a path I never thought I'd have to walk, and I could use the company. The first full day alone was a lesson in the true weight of things. It wasn't just the chores, it was the utter uncompromising responsibility of every single detail. The morning started with discovering the south pasture fence line had been damaged, likely by a fallen branch during the night. It wasn't a simple fix. It meant hauling a new 8-foot post, the treated wood heavy and awkward, digging a hole deep enough in the unyielding clay mixing and pouring concrete and straining to re-staple the tight wire fencing. My back screamed in protest by the time I finished my shirt plastered to my skin with a sweat that had nothing to do with the mild weather. As I gulped down water on the porch, I heard the well pump kick on with a sickening metallic shriek. It groaned and rattled, a sound that meant money I didn't have. Swallowing my pride, I called Pete Peterson, the only repairman for miles who still worked on these old systems. His pause on the phone was long and telling. "Naomi," he said, his voice gravelly, "that's a big job. Gotta pull the pump, could be the column pipe, could be the motor itself. I can come take a look Tuesday, but parts, we're talking 1,000, maybe 1,500. The numbers hung in the air, suffocating. I thanked him and hung up. My eyes drifting to the alfalfa field. The purple blooms were a beautiful taunting sea ready to be lost, to rain and rot, if not cut and baled within days. Darren's casual, "maybe check on the alfalfa," echoed like a cruel joke. That evening, as I was wearily scrubbing dirt from my hands at the outdoor sink, my neighbor Eleanor appeared at the property line, her own watering can in hand. She's a few years older than me, a widow herself with eyes that don't miss a thing. "Saw Darren tear out of here yesterday, off on another one of his trips," she asked, her tone neutral. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just a week in Florida." Eleanor set her can down and leaned on the fence. "Naomi," she said, her voice dropping, "who's going to bring in that alfalfa? Who's paying Pete Peterson when he comes? I see you out here from dawn till dusk. I see that boy come and go as he pleases. What's his share in all this? And I'm going to ask it plain. Does he contribute? I mean, real money for the roof over his head and the food in his belly." Her words were like a splash of cold water. I fumbled for an answer. He helps, he does things, and he transfers money sometimes for bills. The excuse sounded pathetic even to me. Eleanor just looked at me, a mixture of pity and frustration in her gaze. Helping isn't paying a mortgage, honey. Sometimes isn't a partnership. She picked up her can and left me standing there, her questions tunneling into my brain. Later, in the dead quiet of the kitchen, I did what fear had prevented me from doing for years. I opened my laptop and logged into the joint checking account, the one we'd opened when Darren turned 18 for household and farm expenses. The screen loaded and my breath caught. The transactions were a map of his irresponsibility. $200 ATM withdrawals in Nashville, then Atlanta. A $380 charge at the Gulf View Steakhouse. $450 for a fishing charter. The balance, which should have held a cushion for emergencies like the well pump, read $112.48. A numb, cold clarity washed over me. This wasn't oversight. This wasn't him being a forgetful young man. I was breaking my body to keep this land alive, and he was using it as his personal vacation fund. The foundation of my life, built on love and memory, felt suddenly rotten. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, Eleanor's questions and the glaring numbers on the screen playing in a relentless loop. By the time the first birds began to chirp, the hurt had hardened into a sharp, clear purpose. This ended today. After a pot of strong coffee, I went to the old filing cabinet in the den and pulled out every folder from the past 2 years. I spread them across the dining table like a prosecutor building a case. Utility bills, property tax statements, feed, store receipts, vet invoices for the chickens, repair bills for the ancient tractor. With a notepad and a calculator, I began the grim accounting of my own exploitation. The total for monthly necessities was staggering. My modest Social Security check and the irregular income from egg and hay sales covered it just barely. I then tracked Darren's deposits. They were sporadic, random amounts, 200 one month, nothing the next 50 another time. Over the year, he had contributed less than 15% of the total household and farm operating costs. He had a newer car, the latest gadgets, and now Florida. I had a broken washing machine and a dread of the mailman. The shame burned hot, but it was directed inward. How had I allowed this? I had confused being a supportive mother with being a doormat. I needed legal ground to stand on. I found the business card dusty and tucked in Mark's old Rolodex. Helen Wright, attorney at law. My hand shook only a little as I dialed. Helen remembered me, her voice warm but professional. I laid it out, my voice catching as I explained the farm, the account, the utter financial one-way street. She listened without interruption. "Naomi," she said finally, her tone kind but firm. "Let's be very clear. The deed to that land is in your name only. It was transferred to you upon Mark's death. That farm is your separate property, your asset. The joint account, however, is a different creature. In the eyes of the bank, you are both owners with full rights. Either of you can withdraw every last cent, and neither can stop the other. He has no legal claim to your land, but you've given him a legal claim to the profits from that land, which he is clearly exercising." She let that sink in. "You are not helpless here. You don't need to stage a dramatic eviction. You need to strategically and calmly reclaim what is yours. First, secure your finances. Then you need to decide what a healthy adult dynamic looks like. And if it involves him staying, it must be formalized. Clarity is kindness even when it feels harsh." I thanked her, my mind racing. The fear was still there, but it was now sharing space with something powerful, agency. Helen had given me a map. It was time to start walking. The drive to town felt different. I wasn't going for groceries or feed. I was going to war, a quiet, bureaucratic war for my own survival. My first stop was the First Farmers Bank. Janet, the head teller who'd watched Darren grow up, smiled warmly. "Morning, Naomi. What can we do for you?" I took a steadying breath. "I need to close out joint account number 714, Janet." Her smile faltered for just a second, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. She didn't ask questions. She processed the closure and handed me the remaining balance, $112.48 in cash. It felt symbolic, holding the physical evidence of my depleted resources. Then I said, "And I'd like to open 2 new accounts. a checking and a savings, in my name only. Filling out those forms, signing my name as the sole owner was an act of profound reclamation. Next, I went to the feed and supply store. I needed labor I could count on, and I needed it now. I saw Jacob Miller stacking bags of grain in the back. He was in his early 20s, strong and quiet, the son of a dairy farmer a few miles over. "Jacob," I called. He wiped his hands on his jeans and came over. "Mrs. Wilkins?" "I have a problem. My alfalfa is ready and I need to get it cut and baled before the rain comes midweek. I can't do it alone. Are you available for the next 2, maybe 3 afternoons? I can pay you $17 an hour cash at the end of each day." His eyes widened slightly. It was good pay for our area. "Yes, ma'am. I can be out there after my shift here ends at 1. The relief was immense. "Thank you, Jacob. I'll see you then." Finally, I drove home with a new checkbook in my purse. I walked into the house through the kitchen and straight to Darren's bedroom door. I pushed it open. I ignored the clutter of clothes, the expensive headphones on the desk, the gaming console. I went to the top drawer where I knew he kept important papers. There, in a small box, were the 2 platinum credit cards. My name was first on the accounts. I had co-signed years ago to help him build credit, a mother's act of faith. I took them out, the plastic cool in my hand. I walked to the kitchen, opened the utility drawer, and took out my heavy-duty sewing scissors. I lined up the first card. The sound of the scissors shearing through the chip, the magnetic strip, and the embossed numbers was a sharp, definitive snip. I did the same to the second. The 2 halves fell onto the counter. I felt a tremor run through me, but no regret. That evening, after Jacob had left and I'd paid him from the cash I'd withdrawn, I sat at the computer. I typed a 1-page document titled Room Board and Labor Agreement. It was simple, direct. It specified a monthly room and board charge of $600, far below market rate, but a start. It listed specific weekly farm chores with estimated time commitments. It stated that all income from farm operations would be deposited into my new account and all farm expenses would be paid from it. It outlined that he was responsible for his personal expenses, including his car payment, insurance, phone, and entertainment. I printed it. I placed the 2 severed credit cards, the bank receipt for the closed account, and the agreement in the center of the worn kitchen table. I made a pot of tea, sat in the living room chair where Mark used to sit, and waited. The house had never been so silent or so full of my own resolve. The panic arrived by phone at 10:17 the next morning. Eleanor was sitting with me at the kitchen table, the remnants of our breakfast between us. A silent pillar of support. When my phone buzzed and Darren's name flashed, the air tightened. I answered, putting it on speaker so I wouldn't have to repeat myself. Mom, are you there? What the hell is going on?" His voice was shrill, jagged with anxiety. In the background, I could hear waves, shouts, the cacophony of a beach boardwalk. "All my cards are being declined. Every single one. I tried the debit card, and it says, 'Account not found.' I'm at the hotel desk right now. They're saying we have to check out. They're charging my card for the whole stay, and it won't go through." "My friends are staring at me. What did you do?" I waited a beat for his breathless tirade to pause. "I closed the joint account, Darren, and I canceled the 2 credit cards where I was the primary account holder, the ones I co-signed for." There was a sputter of incomprehension on the other end. You canceled them. How could you do that to me? I'm stranded. This is insane." The anger was rising, trying to drown out the fear. "I did it," I said, my voice low and steady, despite the earthquake in my chest. "Because I finally looked at the truth. I pay the mortgage, the taxes, the electric, the feed bills. I do the labor that keeps this place running, and you have been using the money that comes from this farm, from my work, to fund your lifestyle. That stops, as of now. That's our money." He shouted the word "our," a weapon. "The farm is both of ours. You're being so selfish, you're trying to control me and ruin my vacation because you're jealous." The accusation, so childish and so cruel, landed like a physical blow. Eleanor reached over and put a firm hand on my forearm. I focused on that anchor. "No, Darren," I said, each word measured. "The farm is mine. Legally and in every way that matters. You have been a guest who doesn't pay his way. You have 2 choices. You can come home, Your key will still work. On the kitchen table, you will find a proposal for how we can move forward as adults with clear expectations and fairness. Or you can figure out your situation from Florida. This isn't about punishing you. This is about me establishing a boundary for the first time in 28 years. The line was silent for so long I thought he'd hung up. All I could hear was the distant echo of other people's fun. Then, a choked, defeated sound. I have to go. The call disconnected. I set the phone down carefully. My entire body was trembling. Eleanor squeezed my arm. He heard you, she said quietly. They never like hearing it, but he heard you. The hardest part is over. He returned home 2 days later on a Tuesday afternoon. He didn't call for a ride. A rideshare SUV dropped him off. He looked wrecked. His sunburn was peeling, his eyes were shadowed with exhaustion and humiliation, and he moved with the heavy lethargy of defeat. He wheeled his suitcase into the kitchen and froze, his gaze locked on the table. The artifacts of his financial reckoning were still there, arranged like evidence. He stared at the severed credit cards for a full minute, then his eyes lifted to mine. There was no greeting. I had to beg Tyler to front me the money for the flight, he said, his voice hollow. I had to tell all my friends my mom froze all my money. It was the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me. I took a seat at the table, gesturing for him to do the same. Sit down, Darren. We need to talk. He slumped into a chair, not meeting my eyes. I began. I didn't yell. I presented the case I'd built. I showed him the spreadsheet of annual expenses versus his contributions. I showed him the estimate from Pete Peterson for the well pump. I described the 2 days of backbreaking work with Jacob, how we'd saved the alfalfa crop. I told him about the broken washing machine, the patched boots I wore, the grocery bills that were mine alone. This is my life, I said, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. For 10 years, this has been my entire life, and you have been living in it, benefiting from it while treating it and me like a permanent free resort with an open bank vault. He opened his mouth to retort, but I held up a hand. I am not finished. I love you. You are my son. But love cannot mean I cease to exist as a person with needs and limits. I pushed the room and board agreement toward him. This is the new reality. If you choose to live here, these are the terms. You pay a fair below-market rent. You have defined responsibilities for the upkeep of the property we both use. You are financially responsible for yourself. If you cannot agree to this, or if you want a different life, I will help you pack. But you cannot stay and continue as we were. That is over. He picked up the paper, his hands unsteady. He scanned it, his jaw working. I saw the struggle on his face, the indignation, the wounded pride, and beneath it, the dawning, ugly comprehension. He had never been forced to see it before. He stood up abruptly, the paper crumpling slightly in his grip. Without a word, he turned and walked upstairs. His bedroom door clicked shut. The silence he left behind was profound, but it was a different silence than before. It wasn't empty. It was charged with the new truth I had spoken. For the first time, the atmosphere in my own home felt like my own to breathe. The week that followed was the coldest peace I'd ever known. Darren stayed sequestered in his room, emerging only for brief, silent trips to the kitchen. I continued the farm work. Jacob came back to help me mend the rest of the fencing, and I paid him promptly from the cash I made selling the first load of alfalfa bales to a local horse stable. With that money, a tangible result of my own organized effort, I didn't pay a bill first. I went online, found the exact replacement part for my washing machine, and ordered it. When it arrived, I installed it myself following a video tutorial. The roar of the machine filling with water, agitating, spinning, working perfectly, was a sweeter sound than any music. It was the sound of self-sufficiency. On Friday evening, as I was cleaning up after a solitary dinner, Darren came downstairs. He placed the signed agreement on the counter next to me. The signature was there, bold and final. I signed it, he stated flatly. But the chore schedule, some of these times won't work with my client calls. I work remote, but my hours aren't 9 to 5. Can we adjust it? I'll still do the work. The same amount of hours, just not always in the morning. He was looking at the floor, not at me. This wasn't defiance. It was negotiation, an adult discussing terms. A massive, weary relief washed through me. We can discuss adjustments. I said, keeping my tone neutral. But the financial terms are non-negotiable. Clarity, consistency, on time. He gave a short, sharp nod. Okay. We sat at the table. It was awkward, stilted. We used words like logistical alignment and equitable distribution of labor. It was the most unmotherly, unsunlike conversation we'd ever had, and it was the most honest one. We created a new chore chart with flexible time blocks. We set up a system for him to electronically transfer his rent. We did not hug. We did not make amends. We built a framework. Later, I stood on the back porch as a harvest moon, huge and orange, rose over the now-cut field. The farm was still here, its silhouette against the twilight sky, the same land, the same house. But the woman standing in it was fundamentally altered. I was no longer just the caretaker of Mark's dream or Darren's provider. I was the owner, not just of the deed, but of my own time, my own labor, my own choices. The title felt earned for the first time. Recovery is not a moment, it's a season. The months that unfolded were a slow recalibration of our entire relationship. Darren paid his rent on the first of every month like clockwork. He took out the trash without being asked, cleaned the bathroom on his scheduled weekend, and spent 4 hours every Saturday on whatever farm task I assigned. Our dinners, once me listening to his adventures, became exchanges about the cost of tractor fuel, the peculiar egg-laying habits of a particular hen, or the weather forecast. The intimacy of shared dreams was gone, replaced by the practical intimacy of shared responsibility. It was less warm, but infinitely more solid. I made space for myself beyond the farm's boundaries. I joined the Historical Society's book club, thrilling in debates about novels that had nothing to do with soil pH. I found an online forum for women over 50 running small businesses, and I began to see my farm as just that, a small business I was finally managing with intention. The lesson that etched itself onto my soul is this. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional self-erasure. The most toxic myths are the ones that dress up sacrifice as virtue when often it's just permission for another's entitlement. Building a boundary is the most loving act of self-preservation you can offer a relationship. It's not a wall you build to keep people out. It's a gate you install with a strong lock that you hold the key to. You decide who gets to enter your space, and you get to set the terms of their visit, terms of respect, reciprocity, and simple human decency. The days after you install that gate can feel terribly lonely. You'll wonder if you've broken something forever. But on the other side of that loneliness is a quiet, unshakable freedom. The freedom of knowing your own worth. My farm still stands. Every morning I still walk out to greet the dawn and the chickens. There is always more work than hours in the day. But now when I look down at these hands, ridged with scars from wire nails permanently edged with earth knuckles swollen from years of labor, I don't just see the weariness. I see strength. I see choice. I see a life I am actively building, not just passively enduring. And that, my friends, is a feeling more valuable than any sun-drenched vacation postcard could ever promise. So I'm curious, and I think this is where real connection happens. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between keeping the peace and claiming your own? How did you find the courage to speak your truth, to set that boundary? Even when your voice shook. Your stories, your experiences, they matter. Share them in the comments below. Let's remind each other. We're not alone in these hard, necessary transformations. If this story of quiet rebellion resonated with you, if it sparked a memory or a sense of recognition, please let me know by giving this video a like. It tells me this conversation is important. If you want to join me for more real, unfiltered stories about navigating family, finding your voice later in life, and the everyday courage it requires, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And finally, if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who might be giving too much of themselves away, please share this video with them. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is hand someone else a mirror. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your time, for your attention, and for being here. Wishing you all the strength to tend your own gardens, whatever they may look like, and the peace that comes from knowing the gate is yours to hold.